Are you having fun yet? Yes? All right, then let's talk business. I thought we should be democratic and start backwards, but maybe not. So when Raphael Russell called me, is he in the room? Called me and asked me if I would speak here. I said, I think you have the wrong number. I'm not a crowd pleaser for designers. I like to talk about the tough stuff. And literally last night, IKEA invited us to a very nice dinner. And the very first thing someone said, and he sits all the way over there, said, oh, you're going to take us to the dark side. And why is that? Somehow when we talk about design and business together, there always seem to be these very uncomfortable truths. And why do I know that? Having run, as Mireille said, Frog Design for 22 years with my husband Hartmut, there was always this conflict between creative output and economic success. And depending on what side of the fence you were, people became very passionate about that, right? So you all know that. I think Frog started a trend of design companies being able to be sold, and I'm actually very proud of that, because in the old days, as a designer, when you would retire, your business would simply go away. And so I think this is very important for design companies, for people to invest in them. I'm also a startup investor. I have invested in over 30 companies and with many great exits so far. And I'm also an entrepreneur bringing technology back to the design industry. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my experience. Does that sound good? All right. So people call this the era of design, right? If you have been around the industry for as long as I have, people consider this the best time in design ever. You cannot open a magazine and someone does not talk about design or design thinking, like the D School at Stanford or the Hasso-Plattner Institute. Everybody now talks about design. But when people talk about design, and when you read about design, it's always managers have to become designers. CEOs need to embrace design thinking. We need to teach business about design. Yet, when you talk to designers, they will say, we still don't have a seat at the table, right? So some of the brightest people from Frog, and this is a shout out to my Frog friends, I know some of them are here, are running some of the best design groups in the world. And they do great work, yet they say, my ideas still get shut down all the time. And they're a little bit disgruntled, in all honesty. Designers also often say, I do so much, like your tea kettle, right? Such a great product, and yet I get so little back. So again, a frustration, or a lot of people say, I want to launch my own product. So back to what Raphael said to me, people here are interested in business. How many of you want to have your own company, want to start your own company, or want to launch your own product? Can you raise your hand? Only one? Come on. So good CEOs that embrace design have always been around. Thomas Watson at IBM in the 50s, and then of course, the omnipresent Steve Jobs, or even the founder of IKEA, right? So it's not that new that CEOs embrace design, but what do investors say? So when I sold Frog, and when Hartmut and I sold Frog, I became, like I said, a startup investor, and I joined the dark side, as this gentleman over there called it. And I walked in the very first day, and I thought, I'm going to bring design thinking to this group of investors. We are about 25 investors, some of them corporate investors from the big companies like Samsung, Olympus, and we get together every week, and we look at 3 ideas every week, and we invest in around 30 to 50 every year. And so I thought, I'm going to help this group with design thinking, and we'll make everything better. The first thing they told me is, design matters, but not that much. And they gave me what they called 10 commandments. So they looked at their decision-making for investments in an almost biblical sense. And you had to check off every one of the 10 to at least have a chance of being successful. And when we talk about the chance of being successful, in the investment world, still only 3 out of 10 companies survive. So it's not that easy to start a business, whether that's a design business or a product idea. Failure is baked in. And so even though you check these 10 things off your list, you still have a very big chance to fail. And so so I could never remember 10 things. I'm too old and not that smart, so I broke it down to 4. I thought 4 things I can easily remember as investment criteria for how to create a successful company. And design would probably be in what I call the mojo area, right? So I call these the 4 M's. Design would be like, it's interesting, it's cool, but as an investor, we go in even further and we say, is it something people must have, rather than really just want to have or an evolutionary product. We also look at the money side, and money side means you have to fund an idea, as John probably knows about his tea kettle. Someone needs to fund it, or you will only make one. So it's very important where you get your money from, because oftentimes people get early money from like friends and family to launch a company. But as investors, we actually call that the dumb money, because these are the people that are supposed to like you. So what we look at is, where do you get the hard money from? Not just to start something, but to sustain something and really bring it to market. We also look at a lot at mitigation of risk. Do you have a business plan? Do you really understand what it takes? Do you understand your IP? I know we had that discussion with Marcus last night that there's less focus on IP these days, but it's still important that you differentiate yourself somehow. And then we also look at management. Do you have a good team around you? Because when we really broke down the 10 commandments and we looked at one thing that we call the most important thing to have in a new idea or a new company, it is a team. This is the very first team that went to California to work with Steve Jobs. And that team, in my mind, embodies that spirit. We had a lot of fun, obviously, but it was also a very balanced team. People that were good at process thinking, which I think also Marcus talked a lot about. Process is very important. People that were very creative, like Hartmut. People that could count the numbers, like me. So really, really well-rounded team. Now I've bored you with a lot of investment criteria. Let's sex it up a bit. I guess it's very obvious what this is. So I want to talk a little bit about the lessons that I learned both at Frog and that I thought are important that tie into business. And one was, like I say, don't be shy. So on my very, very, very first day as an investor, sitting with all these sooty older guys, in walks a Frog colleague, Ethan Imboden. And he introduces Jimmy Chain to us, a sex-positive company. And I thought he'll never get an investment from these guys. But in fact, he did. He did all the 10 check marks. He had a great product in an interesting market. Sex always sells. He was a great guy, a great leader, had a great team, and a good story, and good investors, and so we invested. Secretly, right? We didn't want to tell the world we were investing. So a couple of years down the road, Jimmy Chain was an established brand, but the business wasn't quite taking off the way we wanted to. So we are looking for a new CEO, and they were also looking for a board member to support them. Nobody wanted to do the job, so they ultimately gave it to me. And the lesson for me, though, was this was the best experience I ever had. Because I learned that if you can sell a vibrator you can sell anything. And the team was the most professional team I ever worked with. The CEO would go on customer calls, literally, customer service calls. People call in and they complain about their product, and they tell you everything that's wrong about it. We learned a lot of who our customers are and where they are, and to no surprise, many of our customers came from the Bible Belt in the US or the Mormon state of Utah. And so this was very important to talk to these customers. So I also learned a lot, if you have customers like that, how you have to sell a product which is on a tablet, on a mobile device, very discreet. People order this from home. So I learned a lot about web businesses and ordering that I had never learned at Frog before. So my point being is, I think if you want to be successful, you have to embrace challenges and things that provide opportunities for you to learn something. And for me, this was clearly Jimmy Jane. What Ethan also did really well is the whole brand building in a space that's very difficult. So I want to talk about branding a little bit as well. And this is a lesson I learned from Frog and primarily from Hartmut. When I started at Frog, there were about 10 people. Very small company in the corner of the Black Forest. What the company had was incredible pride. These 10 people, let's just say big ego. But they were not spoiled, and Hartmut was very keen that he had to invest money back into his brand and into his company. And so already back then, Frog was advertising on 4 magazine and bought every back page ad. So this was when paper was still in, but every back page ad in 4 magazine. When we went to the US, we bought every back page ad in ID magazine. And when we went to China, we bought every back page ad in Access magazine, the most famous, I would say, design magazines at the time, maybe some Italian ones that we didn't get to. And not only did we buy these back page ads, we also photographed every product with incredible care and invested a lot of money back into us. And how that differs a little bit today, a lot of companies invest internally by providing massages and nice amenities, and they all create a good corporate culture. But I think what Hartmut did and drove was, we need to tell the world about us. We need to really, be proud of what we do, show our products with great pride, and tell everyone. And I think that was very great to build the brand of Frog. Let's see, what else did I want to say about branding? No, but so that was a big lesson for me from Hartmut. What I wanted to say was, this didn't bring us customers. Our customers didn't read ID magazine or 4 magazine, but what it brought was really great employees. So even years later, when we didn't do the advertising anymore, people would come to us and they said, we got into design because of you, because you showed us what it can be. And you showed us what a great industry this can be. So I think brand building is very, very important as a lesson. Another lesson I learned, so you wonder, why is this business? I think what I'm more talking about is taking risks and going out. And that's what business is all about. So when I also joined at Frog, Hartmut had already been working for Sony in Japan, almost a little bit by accident. Nowadays, everybody loves to travel to Japan, loves to travel to California, but back then, that was really a new frontier. People didn't speak English, the factories were, this was not yet where made in Japan was sexy. So my point being, I think as a designer, you need to embrace where new stuff happens. My husband teaches in China, and it's amazing what we learn there. I think the new frontiers of today are probably not Japan anymore. It's really the areas where things happen, India, South America, and I think as designers, you have to look outside of your borders and look what's happening there and where the great companies of tomorrow will be. Other lessons from Frog. This is something few people have ever seen. And this ties into working with Steve Jobs. You cannot have a design conversation anywhere with any customer when what doesn't come up? Apple, right? It's the designer's friend. It's like we can all point to it and say, like, this is the way it needs to get done. And everybody always thinks Steve was just brilliant, right? It just came out of his head. He was just this guru of design. A couple of years ago, I cleaned our house. Yep, I still have to clean house. And I found a red notebook. Almost wanted to throw it away, but on the cover it said, Apple Confidential. And it's from 1983, and it's the most amazing document. 60 pages of Steve defining what he wanted Apple to be. And it's meticulous. It's typewriter written, and it defines everything. It defines the people he wanted to hire. It defines financial salaries he wanted to pay. It defines the spirit of what he wanted the product to be. So the point being, everybody always thinks that Steve just had this brilliant intelligence or instinct for design. No, he had incredible discipline. And I think that's the lesson for probably every designer is like, you need to write it down. It doesn't just happen. And you need to have the rigor and the discipline to see it through. Now, discipline alone will not get you very far, so you also need a little bit of vision. And no doubt with Frog and Steve, I mean, these products are from 1984. They would still be relevant today, right? This was kind of envisioning a tablet, and there's a whole series of products we created back then. And at Frog, and Leila knows this, she's here also, we often look way, way out, way, way out. What will consumers do 10, 20 years from now, and then pull it back into what it means today? And when you look at that work from 1984, like I said, it's still very relevant today. And at Frog, again, the lesson was, look outside your comfort zone. So what I'm showing here is some work we did for Microsoft, probably about 20 years ago. And this was so Frog was now famous as a product company post-Apple, right? We could design shapes, there was no doubt about it. And this whole notion of UI was still very foreign to people. So Hartmut said, we need to embrace this. We need to kind of learn from these strange people. And so we bought a company in Austin, Texas. They didn't know how to do UI. They were doing CD-ROMs at the time. But they were doing something that we called new media at the time. And so we brought them in, acquired their company, and learned from them, learned from their thinking, learned from how they looked at an experience more from the software perspective rather than the hardware perspective. And it sounds great, right? Because it became the core of Frog's business years down the road. It was hard. It was incredibly hard. Because it's almost like you are this happy family, and all of a sudden you adopt this cool kid, right? Dresses better, talks better, is kind of the cool kid. Everybody in the company hated them. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people. And so internally, we had to really clean house, and we had to almost start from scratch. We had to say, this is important to us. We need these new thinkers, even if some of what they say sounds foreign to us. And we need to evolve. So this is not maybe necessarily the best. Microsoft generally doesn't produce the best products, I think. I hope nobody from Microsoft is here. But I think this shows a little bit how we brought the 3D thinking and the 2D thinking together. So this was some of the early UI work. And again, a very, very hard lesson for a company when you need to look out and integrate new areas in business expertise. So now we had embraced UI. We were hotter than hot because that was the new hot thing at the time. So people came to us and they said, you are so hot, we want you to bottle it, almost like in Marx's thing here. We want to bottle that creative juice and that energy, and we want to buy it. What did we say? We can do that, sure. We can do anything. So we started a software business. And what we wanted to do was really break down the barriers in how designers talk to the rest of the world. And so what we took is we said, everybody communicates with different documents, marketing requirements documents, engineering documents, bill of materials, right? Very much like Marcus talked about the process too, and the learning you'd get from the factory floor. So we wanted to encapsulate that in a software, and we created something called data blocks. So if something changed in the marketing requirements document, it would automatically change in an engineering document, right? So if something had to be more expensive to be made, it needed to be also more expensive in the market. It was brilliant. I honestly think it was still brilliant today, but it was an epic failure. We spent millions on it. Banks that one day threw money at us because they said, this is the new wave. The next day they wanted to close us down, right? So risk is very difficult. Evolving your business, and Simone knows this too, it's incredibly hard to do. It always sounds easy when you are successful afterwards. At the moment, not so much fun. So I'm showing you something here to kind of make that point that Hartmut didn't want to really have in there, but I did it anyway. On the left here, you see Hartmut writing a letter to file for insolvency in Germany. This was after our software endeavor. It was after the 2000 bubble burst. So oops, you made some mistakes. The most painful moment in anyone's life, but also maybe a good start. And so what Hartmut and I did, and I think this comes a little bit to risk, you got to take some risks sometimes, and risks are not comfortable. At the time, Hartmut and I took a loan back out of our house. It was actually a time when he wasn't that healthy and we had 2 young kids, but we were convinced. We wanted to build the greatest design company in the world. So we took out a loan. And in all honesty, we asked a lot of the Frog senior executives if they wanted to come along for the ride, if they wanted to invest in our vision and in our goal. And guess what they said? No. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. Making that decision to forgo your salary today for some gain in the future, very hard. So when we see the Googles and the Facebooks and so on out there, it is very hard to create a business. So in our case, it worked out okay. So on the right, you see Business Week, then 5 years later, announcing that we are able to sell the business very profitably. They said we got 25 million, we got a lot more, which is great. So in 5 years from nothing to reward, remind yourself of that. So I want to talk a little bit about today, right? Because talking historically about business decisions and hard decisions is always easy when, like I said, it turns out okay. So what are these trends that as designers we need to look at today? So this is a crowd-funded 3D printer that Frog designed and put in Indiegogo to raise $700,000. And now has since funded a couple more rounds with this product. I'm not yet sure what to think of crowdfunding. As an investor, I still think the 10 rules apply. And sometimes crowdfunding is so easy because you can make easy promises. But it's a trend. It's something we need to look at when we design experiences. And we are probably only at the beginning here. Very much like the social society now with Uber and Airbnb. I think as designers, this will completely change how we can be successful and how we design new products and experiences. So I think as designers, we also always have to look at what's new, what's out there, how do our customers think, and what do they embrace? And I often don't see that in designers. It's always still doing it the way it was comfortable yesterday. And so this would be my, hey, what would I do today? And so I also want to show that I do, in fact, eat my own dog food when I say that. So in 2009, I started investing in video, became an investor, because I just thought it's amazing what a tool that is, right? One frame of video can say more than 3 pages of text. And I was also convinced that we all live with these devices now, right? I can hardly live without it for 5 minutes. This is how we communicate. And if this is the device that we communicate, then video is the language for that device. So I was convinced of that. That was my principle. And it's very interesting that Marcus talked about going into people's homes. Investing in technology, I later brought that back to my experience in design. Because at Frog, it's exactly what we do. We go in people's homes, we travel to the Sub-Sahara Desert to interview people and look how they live. Now, if you look at people in the room, we all look very white, right? So going into people's homes, let's say in China, as white people, not so comfortable for them. And so I'm actually out democratizing what Marcus does, which is amazing that I can do that with IKEA, because I feel like these people can record their own experiences. They don't need us to be there and talk to them. And in fact, they are a lot more relaxed when we allow them to show us what their world looks like. And this sounds very easy, right? Everybody can take a video, but managing video is very hard, incredibly hard, because you know this from your iTunes library. You get lost very easily. So we also tackled the hard part of managing video on the back end, make it easy for everybody to see how consumers experience the world. And I call that truly democratizing research. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that.
Getting consumer insights is difficult, time-consuming, and expensive. Traditional market research had its roots in surveys, first used in Roman times, and focus groups developed in the 50s. Isn't it time we move forward? Today we know that observation is critical to understanding consumers. Everyone has a smartphone and shares details about their lives. Meet Vidlet, created by the former leaders of Frog Design. By using smartphone video, Vidlet connects brands directly to consumers through real-world observations, anywhere, anytime. With Vidlet, you simply develop scripted questions that users answer with short selfie videos. In minutes, you get real observations from all over the world. On the secure Vidlet portal, organization, analysis, and reporting are all there for you in one place. An easy experience and the latest technologies developed in Silicon Valley. Vidlet, mobile consumer insights.
So that is my contribution to democratizing design, and I hope you like it. But that was not really the point of what I wanted to talk about today. I think I wanted to talk about business and entrepreneurship. And I wanted to show a little bit how maybe the other side, the dark side, thinks a little bit. And I think it's time for designers to embrace that business language and make it a two-way street so that you all have a seat at the table, as people call it. And so that's my call out to you, to embrace new things, read a lot of business crap, if you feel that way about it, and just make yourself smarter and more relevant, because you can design business. Thank you.